Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Seaman, and welcome to Get Hired Live. Figure out how to get hired in this difficult job market. So, welcome. And as always, I want to start the show by asking you to introduce yourself. So, in the comments, be sure to add your name, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're looking for in the job market, where you're looking, and most importantly, make sure you're networking with each other and connecting. Networking is so important to your job search, and you might as well get started now. So, reach out to each other. Maybe you'll see someone who's looking for work in your industry or an industry that you want to jump to, and it's always great to job search together. So be sure that you're connecting with each other in the comments, and then obviously put your questions into the stream. We have an expert coming up who's wonderful, and we'll be answering them in just a bit. And in fact, I want to bring her on now. So I want to welcome Kerri Twigg to the show. She is the founder of Career Stories Consulting. So welcome to the show, Kerri.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you for joining us. And, I want to talk a little bit about what you've sort of created, because we talked a little bit before the show that your background is in the arts. You have so much experience in the job search career space, but you started doing this thing called the Career Stories Method, which is also the name of your book. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so I know that when I was trying to figure out what I want to do with my career, I found that there's lots of stuff on the job search side. So like how to write a resume, all the strategic bits, but they weren't matched with the, what are you really good at? And what I wanted to do was figure out what I was really good at and find a way to share that. So I actually found this method I was working in the arts, not making a ton of money, crying about money all the time. And I took this old playwriting method, and lots of writers know it too, where I just thought, like, when you write a play and you're stuck, you'll take your play and you'll write down different scenes from the play on a bunch of different cards, and then rearrange the order of them until the story makes sense. And I decided, I was like, well, what if my career so far has been a play? What are the scenes that are really significant? So I started to write down like stories of work that I was proud of on an individual index card. And then I did it the next day and the next day. And I laid it out like it was a story, and looked at where what the peaks and valleys were and what were the common themes, and then decided to use that to be the foundation of my resume, to be the foundation of how I introduced myself, who I was on LinkedIn, and realized I'm like, oh, it's a method then.
That's fantastic. And
Yeah.
and I think that's such a great thing to sort of know about, because so many people I think struggle with, where is their career going? Where are they, should they move to? So I think that's really great. And, I think one of the things that we, talk about when we talk about career stories is, like you said, putting it together. And, on index cards, I know that's something that, if you're a writer or you're a playwright or something. So is that what people should do? Should they write down sort of the scenes or chapters of their career on postcards, or, how should they do that?
Yeah, exactly. And pardon the car alarm.
Oh, no worries. I'm in New York City. It's music to me.
I'm like, I've never heard this before. Yeah. So everyone, like, the first step with anybody I work with, so whether they're, a teenager trying to decide what they want to major in, or a student, or they're an executive trying to figure out their next move, everyone starts off with the stories. So the way that I instruct people to do it is I say, so take a minute today and just think about a moment that you were at work where you felt amazing, where you felt like time stopped, you were in the zone. You left work feeling incredible, and then write down that specific moment. And it might be big, right? So it might be you save the money, you save the company millions of dollars, but it might be small. It might be about the time that you stayed open 5 minutes later because someone came in at the last minute. And so you write down one story today, and then repeat that activity for the next 7 days. And what you're going to find after 7 days, when you compare them, is you can look at each story and go, well, what skill did I use? What skill did I use? And I just write it on the other side of the card. So I'll say, oh, I use my organizational skills, or I related to others, or I solved a problem. And then look at the skills that keep popping up And that's enough to create a foundation for your job search. So those are your super skills, and it's what you can sell, but it's also related to the work that makes you happiest. So you also know that you want to find a job that uses those skills. So everyone starts at that same place, and you can figure it out in like a week.
That's great. And I think there's so many people that'll help. And we have a lot of people joining us. We have people, Ken from Colorado, Stefan from Germany, Eugenio from Toronto. So we got another Canadian. I know you're in our neighbor to the north, and Terry from Massachusetts and Kate from Florida. So welcome. And actually, if you have a significant moment from your career that you sort of treasure and want to carry on, put it in the comments. Tell us about it. And obviously put your questions in. And before we get to the questions, I think the last thing, I think a lot of people are in the same boat right now where they're not sure which direction to go to with their career. Should they change careers? Should they keep on the path that they were? And with the Career Stories method, what do you think is sort of the benefit to someone who's looking in this job market, do you think?
Yeah. So you'll know what work makes you happy, right? So if you have that, then you can go, and then the next part of is figuring out what your values are. And then it's all about testing, right? So I think some people feel like you can do a test and figure out what you're really good at, and then you'll know exactly, but you should always be testing it out. So I think in the market right now, if you're confused about where to go next, or you have 10 different options, I would look at them and then reality check your life. So are you in a point right now where you can go and do research on a job that's a dream job that would be high risk, where it might require a move, it might require like a big stretch? Are you in a place with everything else going on that feels right? Or are you a place in your life where you're like, no, nothing feels stable. I want to keep doing what I've been doing. So I think it's being honest about what your favorite work to do, and then being honest about how you're coping right now with what's going on out there.
Yeah. And I think, before the show, we got a few questions in, and one of them was from Tanya, who said, quote, "I've been working in the corporate travel industry for 15 years or so. My job was eliminated as part of RIF. With travel at a minimum, it seems unlikely that I will land another job in the same field. Any advice?" So I think that's something that could really apply there, because so many people are looking at maybe aviation, the travel industry, the hospitality industry, and saying, what do I do? So I think that's such great direction for people.
Yeah. And if they worked in that, like what was her name again?
Tanya.
Yeah. So if Tanya worked in travel and that's not going to work anymore, if she could go back and think about her favorite moments from working that job, she'll find her transferable skills, and she can bring that to another industry. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I always tell people, think of yourselves as a basket. And people who watch Get Hired before have heard me say this, is sort of, what are the pieces in your basket? So is it, I may be a journalist, but, I do video, I do writing, I have all these other things. So I could take those and apply them to other things. Even though I consider myself a journalist, I have these tools that could be used for other purposes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And if people are just joining us, we have Kerri Twigg, who's the founder of Career Stories Consulting. Be sure to get your questions in, because we're going to start taking them right now. So the first question, and this is also sort of similar to a question we got beforehand. This is from Devani, currently based in North Carolina and looking to relocate to Florida. What's your advice on finding work before relocating? And I know we got a similar question actually beforehand, where someone said, how do I look for a job if I want to relocate, or I'm willing to relocate, and they don't reject me because they see I don't live in their area?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple ways. If you're applying for a job in a traditional way, I would make a line on my cover letter, so somewhere in there about that you're thinking about relocating, and putting that front and center. I would, like, some people change their postal code or their zip code for the new place. I wouldn't do that, because they'll be surprised when you say, you have to travel. So I wouldn't lie, but you could mention in your cover letter. If you get to email your resume and cover letter in, then I would mention it there too. Like, just so you know, I'm planning a relocation. Here's my resume and cover letter. So just call it. And then, but an even better way is to start to connect with people in the industry that you want to work with or work in, and with people who are in that industry, start connecting and following and having conversations with them on a place like LinkedIn. So that if somebody looks you up, they're already going to see you having conversations with the movers and shakers in that industry in the city in which they're hiring. And that's going to make you look connected. That's going to make like you're already part of it. And the last part you need is the job. So I would start making those connections, not just with hiring people, but with people who work in the companies already.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice, because in fact, I had a conversation with someone over email recently about this, and what we were talking about is that this is such a weird time, because it's not like there are a lot of moves going on, and even if you wanted to move, there's not a lot of realtors who are maybe doing open houses to even get you into a place to live or whatever. So that might be actually wiggle room where you could work remotely where you are, and then sort of through that transition move over a few months. So there's I think almost more wiggle room now, because there is uncertainty and more leeway in that, which I think is almost a good thing.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah.
And we have a question here. And I think this is something I know from following you on LinkedIn and then following your work, that you're also into sort of mindfulness and well-being overall, which is very important when you're a job seeker. We have a question here from Sweta, who's how to get over emotions after layoffs, especially during the coronavirus.
Well, I feel for you. So I think you find the things that make you feel good. So you have to be ultra kind to yourself. If you're beating yourself up, if you are making yourself follow a schedule that is not sustainable, that wears you out, you're not going to be a top candidate, right? Because you're going to come in emotional, and everyone deals with it differently, right? They they differ in the way that they deal with it. My best advice is be super kind to yourself. Exercise, even if that means like a daily walk, even if it's with a mask on, like do some gentle movement to love your body. Find awesome people to talk to. So talk to other people about how you are feeling. So find your support people there. Take the time to figure out what you are awesome at, so that you can start to feel really, really good to you, and feel the feelings. So if a memory comes up that reminds you of the great loss that you had from the job, you can feel it, and you can even pay attention when it comes and just go, okay, I'm remembering this day that they had a birthday party at work for me. Where do I remember? Like, where do I feel that, and where does it hurt? And locate it in the body, and see if you can stick it there, and then see if you can even breathe into that like space where that memory is happening, and help yourself relax. So if you're not feeling the feels, if you're not facing them, they can pop up and hurt you for weeks and months and years. But if you can locate it, as long as it feels safe to you, it can be a way that you learn to cope when things come up and know that you can handle it. Last piece is, you've probably, if you're an adult in this world, overcome great loss before. Think about the way that you dealt with that loss before, what worked, what didn't work, and see if you can recreate those things for you. And you're so not alone. You're just like, it's really common, and it's not you.
Definitely. And I think I see Colleen in the comments saying meditate. And I think, if that's something that people are comfortable with, I think that's also a great option. And, when you talked about sort of experiencing the feelings and sort of observing it, I think that's what a lot of mindfulness practitioners practice. It's sort of observing the feelings and dissecting them instead of ignoring them, and letting them sit there, which is really healthy to actually be able to sort of like have a new relationship with those anxieties. I know I try to do mindfulness meditation. I'm not great at sticking to the schedule, but I try. So yeah, but thank you so much for talking about that. And we have someone asking about career stories. This is from Gabrielle, sorry. Any advice on telling your career story when job transitioning into a field you don't have any official experience in, but you've worked to get as much transferable skills, expertise as possible in your current job?
Yeah. So you'll know, if you know what your like top 3 or 4 skills are, that's what you lead. my top or 3 or 4 skills, I can use them in like any industry. They're not going to change. So I think what you want to do is know what you're really great at, and then do the research to figure out how the people in that industry talk. How do they talk about the words? What words do they use? And then as you are talking about your skills, weave in some of their words. And it's not necessarily like the keywords that you find in job ads, but it might just be the way that people relate to each other, or the words that they use. I was working with one company, and one thing that was unspoken there was that all the tech people were called hoods, and all the people who worked in management were called suits, because that's what they wore to work. So if you wanted to get a job in that place, and you talk to someone, you're like, oh yeah, I'm definitely a hood, that's going to matter more than you having a lot of experience there, if you can link it with a transferable skill and use their language, right? If you're still trying to gain experience in that sector, starting a side project, seeing if you could do it on a volunteer role, see if you can come on as a contract to do, like, proposing alternative ways of doing it that's not a full-time job, are also other ways to gain experience.
Yes, and also just going back quickly, we have some people. Katie says, thank you for acknowledging that job seeking is emotional. And Sweta, who asked the question, said, thanks for picking my question. It's so true. Heal first. Everyone heals differently. Get support. Glad we are aligned. Exactly.
Yeah,
so,
I see.
Wonderful. And I also, it looks like we have a few people asking about applicant tracking systems, which I call resume sorting robots. Not everyone likes that term, but I like the idea of robots sorting resumes. So we have people basically saying, they think we have Srinivas, and then we also have, it looks like Manjula, asking about ATS and getting automatically rejected. So what should people know about applicant tracking systems during the job search process, and what should they know about getting past them?
Hi. Okay. So I think everyone knows about applicant tracking systems, and what happens is that because job search doesn't have a lot of for sure things, I think people get a bit obsessed with them, and that instead of doing the work of networking, connecting with people, like creating content, sharing stories, doing the things that usually make you get a job, versus a very small percentage of people who land a job through applying through their resume, is that you concentrate so deeply on that you're hurting yourself. The thing I know about ATS is that what it's looking for is it's looking for those certain keywords, but it's not like your resume goes through an ATS, if the robot, the resume robot says, I got a good one, and then it goes to the interviewer, and they go, like, it doesn't work that way. What it does is it gets sorted. So they're looking for certain words. You want to make sure that, your name and contact information isn't in the header, because a lot of ATSs can't read headers. You want to make sure that there's no fancy formatting. You're not taking like a pretty template from Canva or that you find on Pinterest, but you're using like old school plain, so that even the oldest ATS can find the words. You don't have columns, you don't have tables in there. The dates are really clear. It's better to start with the name of the company than your job title in most ATSs, and you have the keywords. But remember that once the ATS system picks your resume, it goes to a human being. And if that human being looks at your resume and it looks like all you did was like copy phrases from their job ad and stick it on your resume, or take all those keywords and put it in, and there's no story and there's no hint of your personality or what it's like to work with you, you're still going to get rejected. And that's because you have a bad resume, and that's because you haven't done the work to sound human, or to show them how you're different from everybody else who's going to use those same keywords. So getting through the ATS is easy. Use the keywords, make it look, use a simple format and get it. The hard part is that when an HR person actually gets it spit out, the ATS says it's great, that when a person reads it, it's readable, it's enjoyable, and makes them want to go like, wow, I need to call this person.
I think that's great advice. And I think one of the things about ATS systems is that there are so many and they all operate differently. And then even by operating differently, the companies that use them have different subscription levels.
Yes.
So one ATS that might be used by two companies, they may have different levels of accessibility with them. Whenever I talk to recruiters, some will say, listen, I only have this functionality with my ATS system. So, it's almost like, worry about sort of the basics, but don't worry about like this being the be all end all. And also one of the best things to do with ATS systems is try and work around them. So network, try to get your resume to someone in person. So that way you don't have to worry about your ATS maybe getting snagged. You should obviously apply still, but you should also try and connect to a human, because that's so important in the job seeking process.
Yeah.
And we have some questions here from people asking about their LinkedIn profiles, which is basically, we have one question here, which is about your profile section on your resume. And obviously there's a profile section or a summary on your LinkedIn profile too. And then also Hema wants to know, how do you make your LinkedIn profile stand out?
Okay. That's loaded. Okay, I'll give you my formula for resume profile. So resume profile, first line of your resume profile lets the person know what you're a specialist in and how long you've been doing it, and maybe a pinch of what you've been doing. So if I was selling myself as a career coach, I might say career coach with over 20 years experience, helping people figure out they're awesome. So that lets them know like what I am and how long I've been doing it, and a taste of what. So you have one that just lets them know this is what they are. Second line is your skills. So pick 3 skills. I usually would say choose 1 skill from your career stories that you figured out, and then 2 from the job ad, so you hit those keywords. And then the third line has nothing to do with keywords, and it's just a punch of your personality. So those are the 3 lines for your profile, and that's easy. On LinkedIn, it's like, what gets recruiters' attention? That's a huge question. There's so many different ways. So it depends where you're applying for a job, who you're trying to reach, and what the rest of your strategy is. How I like to do it, and how I'll tell clients that they should do it, is usually that first little paragraph, again, just lets the person know how long you've been doing something, and what your skills are. Then I recommend maybe expanding on those skills or telling a story if that's your style. The next part is absolutely, if you go with skills, then tell a story that backs up those skills, and then have some kind of call to action. Usually, though, the thing about a profile is that when I worked at an HR firm, and what most recruiters said that they did who worked at this place, is they would look up somebody, they would find the keywords in their profile, and then they would look at who they were connected to, and they would look at their activity. So if you have a great LinkedIn profile, but all that you like on LinkedIn is other job search posts about resumes, posts about looking for work, you look like a professional job seeker instead of a professional. So the things that you want to like and talk about should be like, if the best company, if your dream boss came to see you and came to your LinkedIn page, what do you want to see them? What would they need to see you commenting on, sharing? What content are you creating? Because that's where the fun part is, right? So I wouldn't worry too much about the profile catching them as much.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. And we have a question here that I think a lot of people are sort of struggling with right now, which is where they are in a job that they don't necessarily like, but they don't know if they should even risk changing it. That's from Cody, who says he's in finance, but he's stuck between needing to make more money, seeking job happiness, and having job security.
Okay. And what should he do?
Yes, basically, how do you sort of navigate that difficulty?
Yeah, so I would first figure out like what your skills are. So if you do the career stories, and then you figure out that you love helping people, you love working one-to-one, and you love managing projects, Then look if how much of your job you get to do, like in your current job. And if it's you most of your day is 7 or 5 days a week, you only get to use one of your favorite skills, then you want to look for something else. You could choose, you could go, so some people will go to their manager. I've done this in the past where I go to manager and go, look, the things that I'm really great at and what I want to do and where I want to go next in my career is this, this, and this. And then we talk about if there's any opportunities for me to gain that experience. If you don't have a boss that you can do that with, or if you're scared of losing your job, so the idea of changing it is like not realistic, then what I would do is, once you know your skills, is make a list of like 10 other jobs that you think you would like to do, and just start conversations and start researching, talk to people who already have that job, just get a feel for what they're really like and test and explore it. And then you can compare it. If you have the opportunity in your job to take on additional projects that give you a taste of that work, that can help too. But I would base the move on the skills that you want to use, your values, and then reality checking before you make a jump.
I think, yeah, great advice. And I think that's going to help a lot of people. And another thing that we probably should talk about is a question here from Marco, which talks about they've been a job seeker before coronavirus happened. And he wants to know, are recruiters biased against long-term unemployed job seekers?
Like, yes and no. Yeah, yes and no. So you still, I think what you want to do if you lost your job before, or you're looking for work before, is and this is something that Kamara Tofolo was the one who, I think she's been on your show, said to do, was add a line about what you've been doing during COVID. So it might just be like you're taking courses or you're doing some side work, but you can add a section to your resume to talk about that. In terms of recruiters on like long-term or short-term, remember that recruiters always work for the company that hired them to find the best. If you are not promoted, like if you haven't changed how you showed up in your job search, like during COVID, and what was working before COVID wasn't working, you haven't changed anything, you don't look like a high-level candidate. If you're not sharing content, making connections, talking to people, showing that you're an expert in your field, then recruiters don't see you as a top-level candidate. And that doesn't have anything to do with how long you've been unemployed. It's that you're not showing up that way. And they often get paid big money in order to find the best. So you need to still show up as the best. I would say that the recruiters I talk to are just like, most of the rules have changed in terms of like, they might not, they might have seen someone who was unemployed. That was sort of a hit against them before, and that's changed. What COVID has done is that we've all experienced some sort of loss. Even if we still have, even people who haven't experienced job loss, we've all suffered something. And with that, that's made us more human. So old job search tricks of following scripts and not being real or trying to be perfect aren't hitting as well as putting yourself out there, being truly honest, but also highlighting your skills at the same time.
I think that's wonderful advice. And, we're running out of time, but before we go, is there anything that you think, job seekers should know, or anything that has been a recurring theme that you've seen among job seekers during this pandemic?
Yeah. Most people that I see who are landing it's what I just spoke to before, aren't following scripts. So I would say I just wrote a job search book, but get rid of your job search books, get rid of anything that's sort of like a template, and just think about what human to human you want to say. What has happened is that all these companies have gone through major change. So they're rethinking how they do things. And what that means is that everyone needs to be a better and more clear communicator. So if there's any skill that you need to improve on, it's trusting yourself and being a really clear communicator. Because if you're going to be getting hired and there's a chance that the work is remote or become remote, depending how things go with this virus, you being a great communicator and positive, and someone who can offer solutions and work with other people, that makes you a superhero candidate right now. Following old things, trying to be too polite, being extra corporate, those things are becoming turnoffs more and more.
I think genuality is
Oh yeah.
I think that's a word. I think that's always a winning formula.
Yes,
But thank you
absolutely.
so much, Kerri. And
Yes,
for
thank
genuine
you.
content, I hope everyone's following you. We've been flashing your LinkedIn profile at the bottom of the screen. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And, to all of you out there, stick around Monday. We're going to have a great show. Caroline Fairchild will be back on Monday. They'll be talking about launching a startup amid this crisis. A lot of people try and do hustles on the side, especially when they're trying to change careers and trying out some new professional pathways. So stick around, and I'll be back Friday with Get Hired Live about job searching once again. So until then, stay safe, be well, and make sure you're following all of the recommendations of the World Health Organization, your local health officials. You could only get a job, you could only be a good candidate if you're well enough to do so. So until then, best of luck out there.